version of you that built the business may not be the version to move it forward. Let me repeat that again. The version of you that got your business to get to where it is today may not be the right version to deal with what's ahead. And what we're up here today talking about is, what do you do to be able to adapt to the changing conditions, to the market being different, to different circumstances than where you started? How do you reinvent yourself? How do you shift and reposition yourself when the market starts to change and you weren't ready for it? And then how to leverage the adversity and the challenges that you run across in order to create growth in your business and become a market leader. Let's talk about that a little bit. As I said, we're dealing with a lot of changes nowadays. Things aren't what they were several years ago. The economic climate is different. We've got tariffs that might make it more costly to produce products. Dealing with a multi-generational workforce that might be phasing out. We've got new technologies coming that could be a challenge, or it could be an assistance to what you need in order to move forward. The one thing that's certain is that the market has changed. But what about you? Are you staying the same person that you were when you started your business 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago? Are you finding yourself to be able to be adaptable, to be able to make the changes needed to move forward with what we're facing today? So the real question is not about the market, because the market is going to constantly change. Factors are going to be outside of our control in order to be able to maintain and manage what's going on. But as a leader, are you willing to make the change to adapt with the market? In this talk, I want to talk about a couple of key things that will help give you something to walk away with on what you may need to do in this changing market. First, we're going to talk about facing the reality of your circumstances and your situation. Sometimes we might want to sweep the bad news under the rug. Sometimes we may want to ignore the obvious in order to paint the picture that we want to believe. But we can't always do that if we want to move forward and deal with and get growth. Secondly, I'm going to talk about what it means to innovate, to go forward and find that reinvention of who you are in order to best succeed moving forward in the future. Once you change who you are in order to adapt to that future, then what are you doing to position yourself, to make that market shift in order to become the leader that you're supposed to be within your marketplace? And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about how you utilize the right relationships. And I want to put the emphasis on right relationships, because there's a lot of people, a lot of opportunities, a lot of resources that we're going to come across, but some of them might not help us get to where we want to go. But on the alternative side, some will be exactly what we need to take it to that next level. Now, as I say this, I want you as business owners, as leaders, as entrepreneurs to start thinking about this. What is the most important part, or what has the most level of disruption in your life right now from a business perspective? Maybe it's the people within your organization. Maybe it's something culture. Maybe it's something within your environment that needs to be changed that you might be thinking about but haven't addressed. Maybe it's the positioning. Maybe it's a strategy shift. Maybe something in your market needs to change in order for you to be able to continue to grow with all the factors that are changing around us. It could be your operations. It could be something that is going on systematically within your business that you just haven't made the decision to put the faith in stepping forward and doing something differently. And then maybe it might be a combination of all of these things, and where that's leading you is to a place where you're starting to lack confidence, or you might be hurting on how you're going to move forward. So as we go through this, I want you, like I said, to ask yourself, where is my number one priority? Where is that most disruption at, that greatest disruption? And what am I going to do in order to be a stronger leader, to change my identity in order to adapt to that? Now, I'll say this. There are a lot of times where we see the changes and the adversity happen, and we can actually adapt ahead of time, where we see the curveballs coming our way. But there are going to be times in life where we aren't able to predict what's going to happen. I'm going to share with you a little story. Take you guys back. Summer 2018, June 27th to be exact. My wife Malika and I, we were getting ready to celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary. Now at this time, I'm working as an engineering manager at a small company, and my wife Malika, she is actually just being promoted to a director level for a Fortune 500 company in HR. As we're getting ready to go on this vacation to celebrate our anniversary, we start looking ahead and thinking about how much time we're going to get to spend enjoying one another, because we've been both busy, both traveling all over the place. And so this was going to be our time to be able to reconnect. On June 27th, I found myself driving from Atlanta, Georgia to Nashville, Tennessee to drop our 12-year-old son off, Cameron, with his aunt and uncle to stay with them for a week. And as I dropped Cameron off, he's excited because he knows mom and dad need this vacation. And he's excited because he gets to be with his aunt and uncle and be able to do things he wouldn't get to do when mom and dad are at home. Get to eat ice cream, stay up late at night, terrorize their dog, beat up his cousins, do all the things kids get to do when they get away from their parents. But as I drop Cam off, I tell Cam, don't worry. Have a good time with your family this week. Mom and dad are gone on vacation. I'll be back in 1 week to pick you up, and we'll go on a vacation before the end of the summer. And Cam is like, you guys need this, go ahead and enjoy. So I leave my son thinking that everything is all right as I head back to Atlanta. Now, Malika and I, we take off and fly to the Bahamas the next day. 5 days ahead of us at an all-inclusive resort. Expected to be in paradise. And we get to the Bahamas, and the first 2 days are amazing. We get time at the beach, fruity drinks, time at the pool, having a great time. But on the third day of this trip, we're going to do something that Malika really wanted to do as part of our vacation. Now, Malika had a trip the year before where she went on a girls' trip and she got to swim with dolphins. She thought this was the most amazing thing. And this small island in the Bahamas, what their big attraction was you could go swimming with feral pigs and be able to take a picture with them. And she was really excited about this. Me, I was thinking to myself, I like bacon. I like sausage. Love me a good pork chop. Are we going to eat? So anyway, we get there, but the whole thing is that we were going to go to this marina, take off and go on this 4-hour tour, or go on this tour to see the island. And part of the attraction was we were going to get to stop and swim with these pigs. So at 9 o'clock, Malika and I, we get to the marina where we're supposed to take off. We get there. We have a decision to make. They have two options. One, you could either do a full day 8-hour tour, or you could do a 4-hour tour. And that would allow us to get back to the resort, do some things that afternoon. And as we talked about it, I said, baby, let's do the 4-hour tour because I wanted to go golfing that afternoon. Now, she decided that she wanted to go to the spa, so this made sense. So we got on our boat at 9 o'clock in the morning, and as we got on, I was thinking to myself, everything is great. It's a beautiful, sunny day, 78 degrees. You can smell the salt water, and I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be the most wonderful, momentous, celebratory time with my wife. So we take off at 9 o'clock, and as we take off, I'm thinking this will be the moment of this trip that I'll never forget. Needless to say, it was. As I share this now, this might be a little hard for some people, but at 9:05, things changed. Take a look.
They met nearly 2 decades ago while in college at Tennessee State University. She was an AKA with a megawatt smile, a beautiful heart, and a magnetic personality. He, a Kappa, a humble guy with a sweet soul who prided himself on his study habits. They fell in love immediately after meeting at a party. They married 2 years later and had a son, Cameron. Their friends and family described their marriage as the perfect union between two strong, smart, and God-fearing people. Tiran and Malika Jackson were undeniably the envy of most couples.
Tonight, authorities in the Bahamas investigating what caused this popular tour boat to explode, killing one American woman and injuring at least 9 others, leaving behind this incinerated floating shell.
But on June 30th, Malika died while the two were celebrating their 15th wedding anniversary while vacationing in the Bahamas. She was 39. These are pictures of the duo taken the day before tragedy struck. They were enjoying a romantic getaway when the engine of the tour boat they were on suddenly exploded off the coast of Exuma. 10 American tourists were on board the 40-foot chartered boat at the time of the incident. Tiran lost his leg, broke his collarbone and fractured his pelvis and spine, suffered second-degree burns, and had his left shoulder dislocated. Malika, who was sitting where the engine exploded, was killed. And now Tiran, whose doctors say is a walking miracle, is forced to be a single father. And while his wife is gone, these pictures, memories, their son, are all reminders of the love that was and will forever live inside of his soul.
I woke up because I was on fire. I woke up because my right leg was literally burning from the flames. Unbeknownst to us, Malika and I were sitting right above a fuel tank, and there was a fuel leak emanating from the fuel line of that fuel tank going out to the outboard engine. Something caused a spark. The next thing you know, the boat exploded. As I was starting to come to, I could see passengers from the second boat yelling, "Get off the boat, get off the boat!" I tried to push myself up, but I crumbled. I tried to push myself up again, but I didn't know it at the time. My collarbone was broken in 4 places. In addition, I had a broken right foot, 3rd-degree burns on my right leg, a fractured pelvis, fractured vertebrae, bruised ribs, and I was in and out of consciousness 5 times in the midst of this. As I'm starting to come to, the only thing that I could do was reach my right hand out, put my fingertips in the ridges on the surface of that boat, and just drag myself 2 feet, 4 feet, until I pass out again. Now, there are a lot of things going on at this time. Malika was thrown off the boat in a different direction. I didn't know where she was. All I could do was just get myself away from those flames. Passengers from that second boat that took off at the same time we did risked their lives to swim over and drag me off of the boat. And I'm grateful that they did, because 3 minutes after they got me off, the second fuel tank on that boat exploded. I wouldn't be here today. They got me to the boat, and I'm starting to ask, where's Malika? What happened to my wife? Passengers on that second boat told me that another boat came and picked her and one other passenger up and took them to shore, and they were headed to a clinic. When they got me to shore, I had to wait some time before they actually got me on the back of a pickup truck and take me on a bumpy road in the backwoods of the Bahamas to a clinic. They get me to the clinic. They put me on a stretcher. They wheeled me in. I could hear my wife moaning, yelling in agony, and as a man, I couldn't do anything about it. There's one doctor at this clinic, 3 passengers that were horribly injured. I'm trying to make myself as still as possible so I could hear what's going on with my wife. After what seemed like an eternity, the one doctor comes up to me and says, "We can't treat you here. Your injuries are so bad that we can't do anything for you." He says, "We're sending you and this other passenger to the good hospital, and that your wife will follow." So even though I didn't get a chance to speak to Malika, I'm optimistically thinking that she's gonna be coming later on, and she must not be hurt as bad as I am. They put me on an airplane, fly me from Exuma to Nassau, get me to the hospital, put me into emergency surgery. I wake up 6 hours later and I see you. And as I wake up, 2 doctors come in the room. And I ask the doctors the most obvious question you can imagine. "Where is Malika? Where is my wife?" The 2 doctors look at each other in confusion, and they leave out the room. And I'm thinking to myself, she has to be here by now. They told me she would be here. After a couple of minutes, they come back in, and they tell me, "Mr. Jackson, we hate to inform you, but your wife didn't make it. That she died at that clinic. That they didn't want to tell you that before they put you on the airplane to come to this hospital." So here I am. Just 6 hours earlier, life was great. Everything was moving along as planned. I'm with the woman that I love and having the time of my life. And just like that, a curveball that changed everything completely. Life that I knew it was no longer there. I cried myself to sleep that night thinking about how this can't be real. This has to be a nightmare. I'm gonna go to sleep and I'm gonna wake up and everything is gonna be just fine the next day. I wake up that next morning, still in that hospital bed, still broken physically, still hurting in disbelief of what happened. I came to a realization, I gotta do something that I don't wanna do, but I know I have to do. That 12-year-old boy that I dropped off with his aunt and uncle, I had to get on the phone. I had to tell my son, I know you know mom and dad were on vacation, having a great time, but I got some bad news. Mom and dad were in an accident, and mom's never coming home again. To have to hear Cameron's voice on that other end, to break the news to him that the only woman who's been close to, his mom, he's never gonna see again, never gonna talk to, never gonna be able to get the love from her again. And then having to reassure him that I'm gonna be all right and that we're gonna work through this. It's one of the most difficult conversations you can imagine. Now, I told him that I was gonna be okay, even though I knew that probably wouldn't be the case, but I told him we'll work it out. Later that same afternoon, as I'm in that hospital bed, I'm starting to feel worse and worse. As I'm laying in this bed, I can see the EKG monitor over my head, and in a matter of 3 hours, I see all my vital signs go from green to yellow to red. Now, my left foot was severed as a result of the incident, and I was bleeding, and it got infected. And at the hospital, they tried to reattach what was left of it. Well, that infection started going through my body, and it started causing my organs to shut down. And I was at a place where I was starting to lose all hope, all belief. They stopped bringing doctors in to see me and just brought priests in to pray over me. Think about that. When you are at your lowest point, you're already having to deal with all this bad news and then coming to the realization that the next time you close your eyes is probably the last time you close your eyes. This is what I was facing. And so I went to sleep that night, not sure if I was gonna wake up to see another day. But I woke up to see the next day and things were starting to happen that I had no control over. All of a sudden, there was a trauma center, a level 1 trauma center in Florida that saw what happened. They heard about my wife. They said they wanted to do everything to give me a shot to survive. So I found myself basically getting confiscated from this hospital in the Bahamas and brought over to Fort Lauderdale, where they had to put me in emergency surgery. They get me there, I go into surgery, I wake up, they amputated half of my left leg to stop the infection. Over the course of the next 5 days, I go through 9 different surgeries to start to try to put me back together again. And in the midst of all of this, I'm praying the whole time, and I'm asking God, why did this have to happen? And I finally get an answer, and God tells me this, Tiran, you have to accept the fact that this was gonna happen. He said, Tiran, if I wanted to, I could have taken your life 3 different times. You have to accept the fact that it was Malika's time to come home. If I wanted to, I could have taken your life when the boat exploded. Could have taken your life when your vital signs went from green to yellow to red. Could have taken your life when I went through 5 surgeries in one day, but I was still here. But there was also a greater message that he left me with. Told me this, that the past that I knew, what was my normal, is not gonna be my new normal. That I was not gonna go back to being an engineer. There was gonna be a new path created for me. The most important message that he left, though, was to be resilient. Be resilient. The obstacles that you've overcome are nothing compared to the obstacles you're gonna have to face moving forward. And in the midst of this, he left me with this key message. Because at that time, I didn't know truly what it meant to be resilient. But what he said was, resilience is not about regaining what was lost. It's about reshaping what still remains. And it's what you do with what still remains that will control the narrative and the future of your life moving forward. Now, I say this with life, but this applies to business, this applies to yourself in leadership, and with any adversity that you face. Understand, by being resilient, you're preparing yourself to overcome the adversity and challenge that you run into. So with that share with you guys just a little bit more about what does it mean to be resilient, because we want to know truly how to be able to overcome that adversity. Well, resilience really comes down to having that ability to cope with, to come to terms, to deal with the challenges, the obstacles, the adversity that we face in life, but use that adversity to be the catalyst to create positive growth as we move forward. Meaning that we aren't going to run away from the problems and the change and what happens to us. What we're going to do is learn the lessons from those things. Realize that that adversity may be intended to make us a better version of who we are. Remember, I talked about identity earlier in this talk, and sometimes we have to be able to change to adapt to what the market faces, what we're facing in our lives. What does being more resilient look like? Just a little bit about that, because there's going to be challenges that just doesn't apply in your personal life, but it also applies to what you're doing as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as people who are running corporations and businesses. Think about it. You have to have that belief, that vision in order to move forward. You have to be willing to adapt to the market, to deal with the changes, being flexible. You can't be rigid to the place where you can't adjust to the circumstances and the conditions in your life. Willingness to solve problems. All of these play a role in developing that resilient mindset to be able to bounce back in the midst of adversity. And so just a little bit. And then lastly on this, I want to talk about the social support, because you have to be able to find the right people, the right community, and the right ones who are going to encourage you, but also help you when times get hard. And so all of this was part of what was put into the mix for me as I was having to go through what was going to be ahead of me moving forward. And so as I advance forward, I want to talk through this, the couple of steps that you have to understand that I ask you as leaders to keep in mind as you walk out of this keynote this morning. First off, I'm going to talk about the reality of your situation. Sometimes you have to accept the reality that you have. I spoke about sometimes as leaders, we may want to shine the light on the great things that are happening and then sweep under the rug the challenges that we don't want to face. What are we going to ignore? What are we going to look past? What are those problems that are in our business, that are in our organization, that we are avoiding, that we need to really face? This picture shows me looking in the mirror. This was months after the incident. As I was starting to heal and recover, I had to realize that I'm not going to look like everybody else. But that was a mind thing. That was a mental problem. I had to come to grips with the fact that this is who I am. And I'm going to have to learn how to operate and move in this world with this disability. That I'm going to have to operate without my wife, my rock, my best friend, the woman that I was building an empire with. That things had shifted, things had changed. That sometimes the old version of who I was not going to be the same person who was going to be able to thrive if I wanted to move forward. Same may be true for you and your business. Are you holding on to something that may be holding you back from being the person that you need to be, the leader that you need to be in order to move forward? In the midst of all of this, I started realizing that sometimes we have to simplify and clarify in order to move forward. You may have a million things going on in your business, but getting clarity on what the right steps are, the next best steps, to be able to get past that point in time where you are coming to reality with your situation is going to be the first step in being able to move forward from this. So it's hard to reinvent if you don't face the reality of your situation. Secondly, I want to talk about the reinvention place or position. How do you reinvent yourself? Well, that gets into this identity change. And in that identity, you got to be courageous with it. You've got to understand that this is the innovation that comes along with where we are. See, most of us think innovation is all about technology or tools or systems or AI. But innovation actually starts with you. When you make that conscious decision that it's time for me to make a move, you're starting to shift yourself. When you look at the outlook of your business, what's working, what isn't, where are you misplaced? What are you going to do in order to make that strategic call in order to shift the way that you think, the way that you operate, the way that you move? We have to change our mindset. If we stay stuck in the same way that we are, with the conditions of the market constantly changing, then we're gonna stay in a place of survival and not getting to a place of thriving. So I want you to think about what innovation looks like to you. What will it take for you as leaders to reach that next level? Maybe it's more information. Maybe it's developing new skills. Maybe it's training new people within your staff and your team. Take a real look at yourself and figure out what that next leadership move I need to make in order to shift to that next level. Now we talked about what the reinvention looked like with identity. Let's talk about repositioning. And what I want to say here is that the opportunity rarely looks like comfort. Now, what you see here is a picture of me, and this was 6-7 months after the incident. I was not a runner. I ran my first 5K. Now, the doctors told me at the time of the incident that if I was lucky, I would be walking 8 to 10 months after the incident with the prosthetic. Sometimes we have to push ourselves in ways that we don't expect. I treated physical therapy like it was the most important thing in my life because at that time it was. My priority was to walk with Cameron and be able to try to get as close to a functional life as I possibly could. What that entailed was for me to have to focus with laser-like obsession on what I needed to in order to get there. 3.5 months I was walking. 6 months I was jogging. 8 months I was learning how to swim with one leg and I was running my first 5K. And so this is sort of what happens when we get out of our comfort zone and start to do something different. Part of what you may be facing is you're looking for where those opportunities are showing up in this changing market. But it's gonna be up to you to find that one place where you can position yourself, the way that you can go out there strategically and find what that opportunity looks like. Maybe it has to do with the offer that you have. Maybe there needs to be a shift in that. Maybe it has to do with your pricing model. Customer buying preferences are changing. Maybe there's something along that where you need to change your messaging to target the right people. Understanding that maybe it's the AI shift. If you're not leveraging it and using it as a tool, it may pass you by, or the competition may pass you by. Think about the systems you need to incorporate in order to keep your business moving forward powerfully. So ask yourself this question as you're taking notes and as you're thinking about this. What is the repositioning move that I need to make right now in order to move my business forward? And then lastly, I want to talk about the importance of our community, that resilient growth is rarely built alone. Look, as individuals, you all are amazing leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners. But understand that it requires more than just you to make everything go. That there is a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of insight, a wealth of information, and a wealth of help out there where you find the right community to be able to help you out. For me, I had to go through numerous challenges. I was dealing with mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, survivor's remorse, guilt. I was grieving the loss of my wife. I had to find the right therapist to help me start to think clear. I had to go through this process of rediscovering myself, rediscovering who I was in order to prepare myself for what was going on in the future, for where I wanted to be. That was gonna be the step of growth that I needed. As I started moving forward, I started realizing that I was gonna go down a different path, and that led to being able to create and document my story. It started off as journaling, started speaking, started getting with an entrepreneurial coach, finding the right people that could help shorten the time to accelerate the process and get me further results quicker, faster, and better. That is all about community. That is all about being able to look for the right people. Part of it is about finding your source of motivation if you don't feel like it. Tell you about motivation. I'll take you guys back. This is probably about a year before Malika and I went on this trip. Malika and I, we were in our basement. We were watching this movie. And in this movie, the lead character died suddenly, and we didn't expect this. And at the end of the movie, it led to a conversation, one of these what-if conversations. What if, what if? So I asked Malika, what if something happens to you? What would you want me to do? Well, Malika thought about it for a second, and she said to me, Ty, if something were to happen to me, I wouldn't want you to mourn for too long. I want you to go back out there and find happiness again. Then Malika thought about it for a second. And she came up with this list. And on this list were the names of 7 women that she said under no circumstances whatsoever better not be bringing you casseroles, better not be sliding in your DMs, better not be trying to be Cameron's auntie. Or I'll come back and haunt you. Okay, I got that. But the last thing and the most important thing that she said was, Ty, if something were to happen to me, I want you to do everything you can to make sure that the only part of me that's still left on this earth is well taken care of. And that was our son, Cameron. So when I think about why did I have to get myself up? Why did I have to get myself going again? Why did I have to try to make something positive out of such a bad situation? I thought about my commitment and promise to my former wife. Now, that was my motivation. That was my reason to go out there and strive for success. You have to find that reason within yourself to go out there and do it. Now, like I said, some of that help may be in this community, and I want you to make it a point to find that one person, that one partner, that one resource, that one tool, that one conversation, and be intentional about it here at this conference that'll be able to propel your business forward. That's how we rise. That's how we grow collectively as a community. And that's how we make change happen. So with this, I want us to take this approach and understand your 3 actions that I want you to walk away from here is, number 1, face your reality. Take a real look at your situation, business-wise, professionally, personally, and be honest and write it out. Say it loud. And that way you'll be able to do something about it. Number 2, what do you need to do strategically to reposition yourself to be in a stronger market or to have a better result and outcome with what's coming ahead with these changing market conditions? And number 3, who are you going to reach out to? What is the connection? What is the resource? Who is the person that I need to talk to? What group do I need to align myself with in order to create success? Because it's all about 1, facing that reality, 2, taking that step to reinvent yourself as the leader you need to be, 3, repositioning yourself to be able to get success in your market, and ultimately we are going to rise with resilience. I'll leave you with this. Don't mourn the business that no longer fits you. Change is going to happen. Change is constant. But are you willing to change with what's happening out here in this world? As I stated before, keep in mind what it truly means to be resilient and create this reborn identity. Resilience is not about regaining what was lost. It's about reshaping what still remains. And I'm going to go back to my first point when I started this. The version of you that started the business may not be the version of you that needs to move the business forward. My name is Tiran Jackson. If you want to connect with me or follow me, I'll be out here, but feel free to connect with me on any of these sites. ICIC 2026. I appreciate you guys listening to this, and I want you to make it a point to go out there and be great and shift in the way you need in order to create success. I appreciate your time. Thank you.